Hi there, and welcome to Her Season of Strength, where women over 40 reclaim their bodies, their energy, and their voices without apologies. I'm Kim Duffy, registered dietitian, personal trainer, mom, and your biggest hype woman when it comes to aging like you mean it. This show isn't about chasing skinny or counting wrinkles. It's about building real strength, physical, emotional, and hormonal. Each week, I'll share straight-talking nutrition tips, sustainable fitness strategies, and conversations that help you feel powerful in your skin once again. Menopause isn't an ending, it's only the beginning. This is your season of strength. Hello, and welcome back to Her Season of Strength. I am so happy you're here, and my brain is just needing to take a little second to get back into the swing of things. I was gone all last week in Alabama for the birth of my beautiful little grandson, Cooper, and it is challenging to get back into the swing of things. And so my brain's just a little bit slow working, but I have had a fantastic week. I ran my 5-day midlife momentum challenge for women 50 plus, and it's been awesome. Today is day 5. Last night I did a presentation for the participants called The Key to Effective Exercise for Women 50 plus. And I thought, you know what? I put in all this time creating this presentation, and it's such valuable information for any and all women, not even just women over age 40. But I talk specifically about, how hormones can come into play and why it is essential for us to be doing strength training after we hit our 40s. So I thought I would chat with you all about that today. So I just want to talk about a few different issues, basically just kind of the key principles to, how to create effective strength training for women 50 and beyond. So I want to talk about what works, what doesn't, and how to make exercise something that you can stick with for the long haul. Because my goal is I want you to have a little more clarity and confidence about how to train your body now, not how you did it in your 20s and 30s. All right. So first of all, as women, we go through these huge changes in our 40s and 50s. Obviously, we're all there, right? We have some major hormonal chaos going on. We have that dropping estrogen level, which can lead to muscle and bone loss. It can cause some insulin resistance, which also can promote more of that fat storage, which we tend to all see that and feel that, especially kind of around our midsections. But all of these things work together to slow our metabolism. And on last week's episode, I talked specifically about metabolism. And I'm gonna touch on, some of those things again today, but we're gonna do more of a deep dive specifically into making our workouts more effective. So what that means is just that, you can be doing the exact same thing you've done all of your life. You're the same way you've been eating, the same way you've been moving your body, but you might not get the same results today as you saw back then. And not to mention, you might see weight gain without doing anything different in your routine. I'm not sure if anybody's noticed this, but I definitely did. I started seeing this in my 40s. And like I've told you guys many times before, is I didn't even start strength training until I was in my 40s. But the good news for us is that we don't need to work harder. I think some women just go, oh gosh, I just have to do it more often. I need to work out more often. I need to do more cardio. I need to restrict my calories more. And we don't necessarily need to do, we don't need to do that. Sorry. We need to just be a little smarter about how we're moving our body and what we're putting into it. And that was the whole point of my 5-day challenge. But that's what I want to talk about in today's podcast episode. So first of all, I want to touch on some really common mistakes that I see women make. And the first one is they're only doing cardio, right? Where they're biking, they're walking, they're doing the treadmill, they're hiking, they're doing the elliptical, step class, aerobics, and they can just be, working out like crazy, doing loads of cardio, thinking that oh, okay, I'm going to gain muscle this way. And unfortunately, you're not. You're not. It's great for your cardiovascular system, and I'm not saying not to do cardio at all, but what I'm saying is There are other more effective ways for us to stop that muscle loss and build up that strength and build up that metabolism that we're losing with age, and especially after postmenopause. I mean, I remember most of my life and before I started strength training, I used to call myself a lazy exerciser because I would love to just, go to the gym, jump on the treadmill, jump on the elliptical or the bike, watch a show on the little TV there for about 45 minutes, and then I might stretch a little bit afterwards, but that was my workout. I called it good, right? But I wondered, I was like, oh, I'm so active. I'm doing everything. Why am I not seeing results? Why am I not seeing more tone in my muscle? Why am I not seeing more fat loss? And that's because, I was only doing cardio. The second mistake I want to talk about is women using too light of weights. They're not challenging themselves. They're not challenging their muscles. I frequently see, women that I'm training, that I'm working with, and they might say, oh gosh, Kim keeps handing me a little heavier weight. And that's because I watch them and I watch their form and how they're doing these movements. And I'm like, you can definitely continue challenging yourself. You can go heavier. And they might go, oh no, I can't. And then I give them the heavier weight and they say, oh, I did. I can do that. And the reason, challenging those muscles, and our goal is to actually fatigue them. Our goal is to make them really tired and not be able to finish those last couple of repetitions. I know that seems a little crazy. For some of you might think, well, why the heck would I do that? That is how we build muscle. And we are going to talk more about that here as I continue. So right now I just want to focus on, the mistakes that I see. The next one is random workouts. I see women bouncing from, this YouTube video or that YouTube video, or going to a variety of classes at the gym, one class to the other class, or maybe they actually go and they are doing some strength training, but they're just jumping from machine to machine without really a plan for, what muscle groups are you hitting? What did you do last week? Are you doing the same movement as you did last week? And if so, how are you challenging yourself further? And are you seeing progress? Are you seeing that you are gaining strength? Are you able to lift a little heavier? Okay. Next mistake is that women aren't taking the time to rest those muscles that they're working. Okay. Rest and recovery is a huge piece of the healing of those muscles that you just challenged. And in that healing and adaptation, that's where we get stronger. That's where we build the muscle. Okay? So the rest and recovery is also very important. So if you're like, oh, I strength train 7 days a week, and I'm doing back-to-back leg days or back-to-back arm days, and just killing yourself, and you wonder why, you're not seeing results. And it could be that you're not giving those muscles time to rest. And then the last mistake I want to touch on is I think this one's so funny, is that fear of getting bulky. And I think I see this more in like older generations, like our moms or our grandmas, and they're afraid to lift a weight because they don't want to get too muscular or too, looking more male, right? And I find this one hilarious, and I'm going to talk about why that's not even possible for this. But, for us women, especially us women in our 40s and 50s. But, think about which one of those. Are you doing any of those? Which one do you relate most with? Are you doing too much cardio? Are you not challenging yourself with weights? Are you just doing those rando workouts? Not giving yourself enough time to rest and recover? Or just you're afraid? Okay. So here's the truth. Cardio alone is not going to build muscle, and it's not going to necessarily protect your metabolism. I know you're like, oh, you be quiet. My cardio, I'm not giving it up, right? Because the way we build that muscle is through resistance training. Okay, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Next is when we stay with those weights that are too light, it will keep us stuck. We won't see progress. We won't see results. Those random workouts, yeah, they feel good. They keep us excited because you know what? They're not boring. I get it, but they're not going to build results. And without recovery, our body can't grow stronger. And specifically that bulky myth, we don't have testosterone, ladies, and you would really have to work your rear ends off. We're talking, strength training, and really know what you're doing to actually build muscle to the degree where you're like, oh gosh, I look very muscular, I look very bulky, right? We can't do that, right? What's going to happen is that we might see better muscle tone, right? We might see that we lose inches because we are dropping fat and we're increasing muscle, because muscle takes up less space than fat. Okay. We might see that we have increased strength, or we have increased stamina and endurance, or maybe our balance is better energy levels, but we're not going to necessarily see the bulkiness, quote unquote, or very rarely are we going to. There are some people that build muscle really easy. Some women that do, and they might have higher levels of testosterone, but in your life, you're going to know if you're one of those people. Okay, so now I want to talk about how we can train effectively. So the most effective way for us to train is to do strength or resistance training. That should be an absolute priority. And our secret sauce is that progressive overload. And I know I've touched on this in past episodes, but I want to touch on it just in case, you're just listening to this one today. But progressive overload is where we're gradually challenging our body with more weight, more repetitions, or more sets. Okay? So maybe, and specifically, we're doing those same movements. So when I create a training, I'm gonna have my clients do the same workouts. So maybe I'll have 4 different workouts in 1 week, and then they're going to repeat those 4 different workouts the next week and the next week and the next week. But with progressive overload, maybe they're going to do bicep curls. They're starting out with 10-pound weights. They're going to do 8 repetitions 1 week. The next week, they're going to do 10. The following week, they're going to do 12. And then that 4th week, maybe they're actually going to do, rather than only doing 3 sets of each of those exercises, they're going to do 4. So they are pushing and challenging themselves without really realizing it. Because then at that end of that month, they're going to go, oh, hey, I can use 12-pound weights now, and I can start down this same path. And then by the end of those 4 weeks, you see that, you can actually see the data. I've gained strength. I'm able to increase the weights. And that's how we continue to build that strength and muscles. Now, many women will ask, well, how often do I need to strength train? What is the sweet spot for me? And I usually recommend 2 to 4 times a week. Okay? But if you're someone that's starting out not doing absolutely anything, maybe you do 1 day a week, and the next week you try to increase it to 2. Or maybe you just do, 15-minute sessions twice a week. What is doable for you? And how can we make this nice slow progression? Because remember, this is long-term. This is not a short-term thing. This is like a forever thing. Because we need to do this for our best quality of life. We need to do this to, for us to live the life we want to live, to travel, to hike, to, play with our grandkids, to be able to move and not be, stuck in a wheelchair or using a walker for the last years of our life, right? We want to be as active as we possibly can. And lastly, and most important, is don't rush these movements. Form will always beat out increasing weight or speed. I want you to slow down those movements, especially until you get that form properly. In my 5-day challenge, I did have people use my Trainerize app. And the reason why I love that so much is they could see the workouts they were supposed to do. But then each exercise has its own video. So they can go, okay, what is a single arm row? And then they look it up and they get these cues, and then they can do that movement. And you watch those videos whenever you need to, but at some point you're like, oh, okay, I know this one. I got it. I've done this movement multiple times. You have that muscle memory in there, and you know what you're doing and you know what you're supposed to be feeling. But form is so important because that's going to prevent injury. Not to mention, that's going to help you to get into the muscle that we need to be working. Okay? So I usually use a framework, and I call it my strength ladder. And it's how I build effective workouts. It's just kind of a system that I have designed to that works for my clients, specifically women. You know, I have clients from age 45 to my oldest client is actually 83. But it's not about lifting weights, it's about building, starting a framework or starting a base of building that stability and balance. Okay. And it all starts right in the center of your body with like your core and building up strength in your core, because that will affect your stability and your balance. The next thing I want to hit all muscle groups, right? So, start with your top and going down, whether shoulders, back, chest, core, butt, your quads, hamstrings, calves, because they all work together to protect us from back, knee, hip, and shoulder injuries. And I've heard from so many people that, oh, well, I have this injury or I had this surgery, so I can't strength train. And I beg to disagree. Your doctor might have told you that you can't do certain movements, but there is always something that you can do. Maybe if you have a shoulder injury, you can't lift overhead, but I got a bunch of shoulder exercises that we can do that don't lift overhead, that we can strengthen those muscles around those joints. Okay, even if you've had a back injury, you can strengthen your legs. You can strengthen your core so that it is locking in and protecting that back from further injury. It's all the more important that you're doing something to strengthen that, right? To strengthen those muscles that are around those joints to protect them. So that when you are at home and you do something funky and you do a quick twist or turn, or you have a fall or something, you're not going to be laid up for weeks at a time because your back went out. Okay, you're going to be able to bounce back quicker. So I use progressive overload in all of my workouts, like I said, and I explained how I, typically have my clients doing 4 to 6 week. They're going to be doing those same movements, those same workouts, those same exercises, while, increasing the repetitions, increasing the number of sets, increasing the weight they're using in order to be able to see that strength, that muscle, that endurance increase. And I always focus on proper form. When I have somebody in front of me, obviously, I'm going to have them take a step back. I'm going to have them put the weights down. I'm going to have them walk slowly through form until they feel comfortable with that exercise, with that movement, and I can see that they're doing it properly and that they're feeling it in the right muscles. Okay? Because if we're not doing the movements correctly, we're going to increase risk of injury. So that's why I said, I love the Trainerize program, just because I know that my clients have that little video to be able to show them proper form. So I usually, like I said, I recommend strength training 2 to 4 times a week, as long as you are alternating muscle groups. So say we do legs one day. Well, then you're going to let those leg muscles rest for a day, and then you're going to move on to, maybe you're going to do an upper body the next day. Then maybe you'll have a day in between where you're just going for a walk, or you're doing some kind of lighter cardio to let your body rest. And then maybe on Thursday you start over, you do legs, and then you do arms, or maybe you do, throw in some full body workouts there, but making sure that, you're giving those muscles time to rest. And I use this framework in all of my programming, including my upcoming signature program. It's called Fit After 50 Plus. It's an 8-week program that it builds upon everything that I'm talking about here on my strength ladder, but it also includes a strong nutrition component where we're actually doing, weekly check-ins, where this is my signature program, so it's like a little bit more that, it's a group program, but you're also getting very strong personal kind of coaching and guidance. Not to mention a really cool community of women over 50 who are kind of going through the same thing as you. So think about this strength ladder. Which one of these ladder steps do you feel that you're missing most in your current workouts? Is it your core? Is it your balance? And balance is something that we can definitely see as we, as we get older, as we lose muscle. You're like, oh gosh, I have a really hard time going on, one foot. Or, I get kind of woozy and I get dizzy and I kind of lose my balance very easily. Maybe it's, cardiovascular endurance. Maybe you need to push that a little bit. Is it bone issues? Do you struggle with bone density, maybe osteoporosis or osteopenia? So maybe you need to incorporate in some good plyometric type movements to help to build that, put a little more stress and resistance on those bones to help to make them stronger. Or maybe it's just consistency, which I find so often is like, oh yeah, I have a great program, but I just struggle with doing it week after week, or I only get one time in 1 week, or maybe none the next week because I have stuff going on. Consistency can really be an issue. So another vital ingredient in order to see results from your workouts, it's nutrition. And we all know this, right? We can't out-train a crappy diet. So if you're just eating a whole bunch of junk but yet you're doing these beautiful workouts, 2 to 4 times a week or whatever, but you're like, why am I not seeing results? Or why am I, not seeing fat loss? Well, it's probably what you're putting in your mouth. So in my challenge this past week, we talked about, we focus on one kind of small piece of that, and that is protein, which we all know if you're not consuming enough protein when you're, putting all this time and energy into your strength workouts, you're not going to see those results because we got to have the protein, those amino acids to help to rebuild those muscles, to help to repair those muscles that were causing those little tiny micro tears in when we're doing strength training. And that's how we get stronger. So yeah, we talked about, protein as well as balancing our meals to try to balance out some of the energy. Like we know that if we're just eating a whole bunch of carbs are great for our energy levels, but they aren't for long-term energy. Our body can digest them fairly quickly and we can fly through them, and they cause that blood sugar spike and drop. And then next thing we know, we're starving or we're looking for that next pick-me-up. Okay, so in our challenge, I talked about just balancing out your meals. So starting with your solid protein source, making sure you're always having some vegetables and really good sources of fiber, because fiber is going to slow down that digestion as well. And then when you are choosing carbohydrates, trying to choose those higher fiber carbs and being aware, being mindful of portion sizes. Okay, so carbohydrates, we can eat those Olive Garden size plates of pasta and it's crazy because we're hungry an hour later. Well, that's because we digest them so quickly. And that's why we can overeat carbohydrates. They don't trigger that satiety that tells us, hey, you're done, you're full, you feel satisfied, right? They don't do that as well as that protein does and that fiber does. Okay? And some other areas that we know we need to dial in is each person has different macronutrient goals, right? You're gonna, a woman who is 5'10" and 180 pounds is gonna have a whole different set of calorie and fat and carbohydrate and protein needs as compared to the woman who's 5'2" and 110 pounds. Okay, who maybe isn't as active as the taller woman. So basically, in order to assess what each woman's macro goals are, I look at their height, their weight, their age, their sex, and their goals. So maybe your goal is fat loss, or maybe your goal is muscle gain. Maybe your goal is just maintaining your weight and just being more healthy. Okay, so in the Fit After 50 Plus program, I do a personal macronutrient assessment for each and every participant. The next area that is super important is mindfulness. Okay, is just, over restriction. We got to get past that. As women, we have restricted calories. Many of us, not all of us, but many of us have restricted calories off and on during our life. And we have messed with our metabolism. That's another area that we dive into in the Fit After 50 program. We spend a whole week on mindfulness. We also spend a whole week on moderation. Talking about just how can I still enjoy some of those foods that I love, those sweets and the treats, or maybe having a nice glass of wine here and there, or, those salty snacks that you like. How can you still have those without undoing everything that you're doing when it comes to your health and wellness goals? And then also what can be helpful for some women is actually, becoming aware of what they're eating, what they're putting in their mouth. And they can do that through journaling, just to kind of track kind of where they are as far as hitting those macronutrient goals. Not that something they have to do forever. And I talked about this in a previous podcast episode. I believe it was number 4, I'm thinking. And I will link that in my show notes. But just talking about how, talking a little bit about journaling and how it can be beneficial, and how it's not something you need to do forever, but how it can be helpful. And then lastly, one thing that can really make a difference when it comes to the results we're seeing is your alcohol intake. And I'm not talking just, if you're just someone who enjoys a glass of wine here and there, that's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? But sometimes we'll see that, when it's a glass or 2 of wine every single night of the week, it can, that can be an issue. It can make it difficult for you to actually see results with the exercise you're doing. So like I said, I touch on all of those things in the Fit After 50 program. I don't have enough time. I don't want to take up 2 hours of your day today on the podcast, so I'm not going to chat with those anymore today. But I do want to talk a little bit about what common things hold women back when it comes to starting like a program, like a strength training program or a nutrition coaching or a wellness program. Number 1 is fear. I think as women, we can be fearful of maybe injuring ourselves. Oh, I don't want to lift weights because I'm afraid I'm going to hurt my back or hurt my knee or hurt my hip. Next can be a fear of judgment. Like, it can be challenging if you don't feel like you know what you're doing to go into the gym and, like pick up dumbbells or get on a machine. You're like, gosh, what if I look silly? I mean, what if I don't know what I'm doing? I'm going to look goofy, especially when you got all these big old, dudes there who are lifting really heavy and they're looking at you like you don't really belong. That can be, fearful. And then, that fear of failure of like, well, what if I start this, but then I don't, I fail. I don't do well. Next issue that holds women back is time. We're always pushing it off. I hear this all the time. I'm going to wait until after my vacation, or I'm going to wait until after summer is over. I'm going to wait until after the holidays are over, or until your life quiets down a little bit. Or I find what's funny is I'm going to wait to start this program until after I lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds or 30 pounds. And I find that one so funny because obviously, this program would help you to attain that and help you to maintain that, right? Because when we're losing weight, we want to make sure that we are doing strength training or else we're going to lose muscle. And that is a whole other podcast episode. I have done all these. I've been through all this. And I talk to a lot of women every single day who tell me about some of these things that kind of keep them from really taking that first step forward. Number 3 is mindset. One mindset is that, oh, I'm too old. It's too late for me. I can't start lifting weights now. I'm, 50 or 60 or 70 years old. Or I can't because I have bad knees or hips or shoulders or ankles. Or my favorite one is, and I think a lot of women say this, is that I know all these things. I've done this before. I used to be an athlete in high school. I should be able to do this by myself, right? It's kind of like, when, New Year's resolutions, we're going to buy that gym membership or that treadmill or that elliptical, thinking that alone will motivate us to work out. Or, and the next thing we know, we're using it as a clothes drying rack, or we're putting it onto Facebook Marketplace and selling it. And the last thing that holds many women back is that they don't have the support. They don't have anyone in their corner, anyone who is that positive support to keep pushing them forward and who won't sabotage their efforts. And I'm not saying somebody's doing that on purpose, but it can be as simple as, you're really trying to make healthy and good choices, and maybe you're trying to decrease the amount of times that you're ordering food out or ordering DoorDash in or something like that. And your husband's like, I'm going to get pizza. It's hard to say no to that. So it's important to surround ourselves with people who are, positive and find ways to, not that we can get rid of the husband, right? But find ways to keep ourselves on track when those kind of things kind of step into our way. What do you think holds you back? What is keeping you from being consistent with an exercise or a nutrition regimen? Think about that for a sec. Typically, the missing link isn't a single magic exercise that you should be doing. You do this special sit-up or crunch or a magic pill. I know you're going to be like, oh, but GLP-1s, they're the magic pill, right? Or one food that you should eliminate or the opposite, eat tons of. It's not a quick and easy solution. First of all, it's consistency. With everything, you don't need to do it perfectly. I'm not saying consistency means that I'm doing this 6 days a week, every single day. Because you're going to have good weeks and bad weeks. But the key is that you keep doing it regardless of how it looks and even when it's not perfect. Okay? The next piece of that formula is sticking with that progressive plan. Moving forward with continuing to challenge your muscles, like we said, with progressive overload, even if it makes you a little sore the next day, that's okay. Some women are like, oh, I'm sore, I hate this. I always just like, that's just your muscles telling you that you did something, that you challenged them, that you worked them. Obviously, we don't want a lot of pain or anything, but sometimes those muscles, they are going to get a little sore when they're doing new things, and that's okay. That's just like, you worked hard, good job. And then lastly, it's having that positive, that motivating support to keep you going when life gets busy or you feel discouraged. You need something that's going to help to keep you moving forward when you alone are not enough to be like, I got to do this, let's go, right? I mean, how many times have you started that diet or that plan or that program only to quit because life gets too busy or things happen, trips or vacation or illness or birthdays or parties or whatever? Most women quit just as their body is about to change. So having kind of that plan and that accountability is what keeps us moving forward. And I'm sorry, I know this is not sexy. I know this is not like, oh, here's this beautiful little diet that's going to be so exciting and fun. Or here is this workout program that you're just going to love from the very beginning and you're never going to want to stop. No, it takes time and it takes repetition and it takes consistency to build those habits. But you will get to where you enjoy the results and you enjoy how I have more energy when I work out, or it's my mental health therapy. I know that it is for me. Like, I'm sitting at the computer for hours at a day. I'm just like, okay, I have had enough. I need to get in a workout. It's amazing how it can just change your whole view. So we need to change our views to that long term. This is not a short term quick fix. This is the long term. This is the long haul. This is what we're going to do in order to age well and in order to be as active as possible for as long as possible in our lives. So how can we stay on track for the long term? Well, repetitions. Don't quit when you get sidetracked. I love the book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. If you have a chance, I will put it in my link in my show notes, but it's one of my favorite books. But he talks about how to make positive changes easy and make negative habits difficult. Okay? So set yourself up for success. If there's a habit that you want to do, how can you make it easier for you? How can you make it more likely that you're going to do it? Okay? Next, focus on the long term. Focus on, rather than focusing on the scale, focus on your strength, your energy goals. The scale is not going to show the muscle or the strength or the endurance that you've gained. It won't show how you've lowered your cholesterol, your blood pressure, or your blood sugars. These are the things that matter and will carry you much further than that number on the scale. And I promise, if fat loss is your goal, it will come with consistency, with repetitions, and with these changes when you're not obsessing about your daily weights or the daily scale, or if it's moving or not. Next is celebrating every win, whether it's lifting heavier, whether you have a little less joint pain, maybe it's higher energy levels, maybe it's better endurance. These are all wins. Write them down, journal them, post them somewhere you can see them so that you can remember these positives. Next, anchor your workouts and your nutrition, these positive nutrition habits, anchor them into your routine, schedule them. So maybe if exercise, you've committed to strength training 3 days a week, put it on your calendar. Is it Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays that you're going to do it in the morning before you go to work? Okay, put it on your calendar and follow through with it. Don't just make these haphazard, like, I'm going to exercise 3 days a week, because the next thing you know, it's going to be Sunday and you've gotten in one workout during the week. Okay? And then also surround yourself with people who get it. Surround yourself with that positive energy, other people with the same goals. There's a quote that says, "We rise or fall to the level of the people we surround ourselves with." It is so true. If you think about it, an alcoholic, they typically are going to tell you, you're not going to be able to hang around with your friends who also have drinking issues, the people that you have been sitting at the bar with and drinking with, because they're going to pull you down with them. They're going to trigger your addiction. So you need to surround yourself with people who are okay with not drinking, who know how to enjoy themselves without alcohol. Positive support, right? Or if you think about like CrossFit gyms, why is everybody just like so fit and loving what they're doing? Because they have this community of people who are like motivating them and supporting them and pushing them to challenge themselves. It's awesome, right? And this is about making your health non-negotiable. So before I wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about my signature program that I've been talking about. I've mentioned a couple times, because this episode is dropping on September 25th, and the Fit After 50 Plus Bootcamp is actually starting on September 29th. And this program, if this podcast episode clicked with you, and if you were like, yeah, I need to get more consistent, and I want to really start a strength training program that's going to work for me, that's going to be more effective, right? So I actually see results from it. The Fit After 50 Plus program, it would be perfect for you as long as you don't have any kind of issues that maybe a doctor has told you shouldn't be doing strength training, right? Because it isn't going to be a one-on-one training session with me. It is going to be a little bit more independent, but we will have personalized nutrition guidance. I'm a dietitian with 30 plus years experience. So we are going to have weekly live coaching calls where we're going to talk nutrition, health, lifestyle, and those exercises. Not to mention, you're going to be able to jump in the trainerized chat anytime you have questions about any specific exercises. Maybe you want regressions. Maybe you're like, I can't do this one. What else could I do? You would get that, right? And you're going to get 4 strength workouts per week on my special trainerized app. So it's a phone app, so you can take your workouts with you wherever and whenever you go. And like I've been talking about in this podcast, you're going to have support from other women going through the exact same thing as you, right? We talked about how important that support is, how it will help to keep you on track, and other women who have those same goals as you do and are pushing you forward, helping to motivate you. So I will drop the link in the show notes if that's something you want to check out. If you want to learn more about it, if you're interested, please, check it out. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to answer those. If you want to reach out, you can send me an email at info@strengthandnutrition.com or message me on Instagram or Facebook at Strength and Nutrition LLC. So the key takeaways I want you to get from this podcast is just that cardio alone is not enough, okay? Strength training with progressive overload, it's our best tool. And consistency is how we win over the long term, okay? We can't out-train a poor diet. So nutrition is a very important piece as well. So if you've been spinning your wheels, know this, your body is capable of change at any age. So if you're ready for a plan that's structured for women over 50, that uses this exact, strength framework that I was telling you guys about and comes with that support to stick with it, I'd love for you to check out my Fit After 50 bootcamp starting here just in a few days, and I'd love to see you in there. So check out the link in the show notes for all the details. And I want you to remember, this is about progress over perfection. Okay? We're in this for the long haul, and this is your season of strength. Have a fantastic day.